Welcome back to The Contender. I'm your host, Congresswoman Erin Houchin. Today's guest is someone who's been at the center of some of the biggest legislative wins for working families and the America First agenda. Ways and Means Chairman Jason Smith. As chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, he helped lead the charge on the Working Families Tax Cuts Act, delivering real relief for families, workers, seniors, and small businesses across the country. We're going to talk today about how this bill came together, what families are already seeing in their tax returns, and what comes next as Republicans continue advancing President Trump's agenda. Chairman Smith, welcome to The Contender.
I'm thrilled to be here, Erin.
Well, it's great to see you this morning. We've known each other for a long time. We've become friends in Congress, and I'm so appreciative of your leadership as chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, particularly as we went through the last reconciliation process, which delivered the Working Families Tax Cuts Act. Has that process been like? Where do we go from here? What are the biggest wins you think for families in the Working Families Tax Cuts Act? Let's remind the American people what Republicans delivered last year.
So in the Working Families Tax Cuts, this was not something that just happened in a couple months. This was a work in progress for 2.5 years. It all started out with our very first committee hearing as chairman, which was in a lumber yard in Petersburg, West Virginia. We heard directly from working moms, small businesses, farmers, coal miners, of the issues that they're facing in today's economy. It was called State of America's Economy Appalachia. Then we went to a farm in Yukon, Oklahoma, heard from farmers and ranchers, oil and gas producers. We went to a factory, Peachtree City, Georgia. We went all over the country, in fact, more than 30 different states, hearing from real Americans of the issues that they're facing, and that led to the 103 different tax titles that was within the Working Families Tax Cuts. And they were tax items that were directly focused on small businesses, working families, and farmers. And it's the largest tax cut in U.S. history, which was delivered. If we wouldn't have done this, Erin, every American would have faced a 21% tax increase. But we not only prevented the largest tax increase in history, we made additional tax cuts. We created the no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, expanded the child tax credit, expanded the standard deduction. You could go line by line. That is why when people filed their taxes this year, they faced the largest refund season in the history of our country.
It's amazing. I think it's important for us to remind people, because that was July of last year when that bill got signed into law by President Trump. And what most people don't know is because we prevented the largest tax increase in American history by making the Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act permanent, as well as many other new provisions that you mentioned, like no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, tax relief for seniors on Social Security. Because of that, we prevented this incredible tax increase, and now American families are seeing great refunds. I just met with 2 senior citizens on Social Security when I was back home, and they talked to me about their refund and how excited they were to have a tax refund for this tax relief that we provided in the Working Families Tax Cuts Act. It was because of your leadership, as well as the leadership of others. I sat on the Budget Committee. You and I were both over at the White House in meetings on this bill, many hours of meetings. And with the president and his advisors on trying to craft a piece of legislation that delivered on the results and the priorities that President Trump wanted. I think we did an amazing job at not only achieving the objectives, but being fiscally responsible in the process. Talk to us about what that was like working with President Trump and the challenges that we faced in trying to get this across the finish line.
Erin, without a doubt, out of all the executives I've ever worked with, either governors or presidents, and I've worked with 3 different presidents now, there has never been a more engaging president than President Donald Trump. During the process, he would call me repeatedly with tax ideas or suggestions or asking me questions. He does that now also on trade and different items, but he was fully engaged. In fact, 2 days before we released the bill text of all the tax titles, I sat down in the Oval Office with him for a couple hours with him and his Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, going line by line of all the different tax provisions. And he was asking me all kinds of questions, like, why is this not in the bill? And I would have to explain to him that we have to thread a needle. We had to go in this knowing that we could only lose 2 members of our party in the House of Representatives. And one, you're almost always guaranteed to lose. So you could only lose 1 other person. That's all we lost. We lost 2, but it was threading a needle. But it was massive. It was a massive accomplishment. Like I said, the largest tax cut in U.S. history, but the bill did so much more too. It was the largest investment in the border. It had the most significant welfare reforms in the history of America. It cut $1.4 trillion of mandatory spending, the most ever. There were several provisions within the big, beautiful bill that people don't talk about, but Republicans have campaigned on for decades. Like, we've campaigned on defunding Planned Parenthood. We did that in this bill. Republicans for decades have said they're going to do it. They never did it. We did it. We eliminated a tax on the Second Amendment for the first time since 1925. Republicans believe that, or Republicans talk about how they're for the Second Amendment, but for 100 years they never did anything on it. And so that was one of the biggest wins for the Second Amendment in decades. It was all within the one big, beautiful bill.
It's really incredible the number of things we were able to accomplish in that. I appreciate you highlighting those. And I just want to echo your comments about President Trump and his engagement with not just high levels of leadership, but rank and file members. And being invited to the White House to participate in those budget discussions was really an incredible experience for me as a small town Southern Indiana girl to suddenly be speaking with the President of the United States about his priorities and what we could accomplish for him. And well done to you for your leadership in spearheading it and getting it across the finish line.
He wouldn't even let us leave until we came up with the resolution on the budget resolution. He said,
you stay here, you talk. I think we were in there for 4 hours.
It was a long time.
And we didn't quite have the agreement yet. And we were a little bit, I was a little bit nervous about going into the Oval Office to tell the President that we had not yet come to an agreement after 4 hours of negotiating with ourselves. But we got it done. And now we are looking at potentially another reconciliation bill. I just wondered what your outlook is for that, what you think we can accomplish. There's 2 different schools of thought on how we might approach it, just like there was last time, right? 2 reconciliation bills or one big one. That's why it's the one big, beautiful bill, because we decided with your encouragement to do one big reconciliation bill. Now we're getting a second bite at the apple, maybe to fund ICE and CBP, since Democrats in the Senate and House refused to fund ICE and CBP, causing a government shutdown, the longest in history, just for the Department of Homeland Security, during a critical time when we're in conflict with Iran. And also we've got, under the Biden administration, 12,000 known terrorists on the terror watch list were let into the country in our wide open southern border. So where do we go from here? What are you looking for in reconciliation?
Erin, it's a complete shame that the Democrats' reckless behavior is the reason why we're in this situation today, and being forced to look at the tools of reconciliation in order to fund our homeland, to fund our Coast Guard. We're in the middle of a military conflict with the world's largest sponsor of terrorism, and the Democrats have shut down the funding of our homeland. They've shut down the funding of our TSA, our Coast Guard, our FEMA. That's absolutely unacceptable. And why are they doing that? For political reasons, because they are fighting harder for illegal immigrants than they are U.S. citizens. And that is why we're at the place where we are right now. Doing a reconciliation bill is not easy, because it's done by just your party, and you have to thread a very careful needle. We can only lose, once again, 2 people.
2 votes.
And so we're going to have to thread a needle. The reason why I pushed for the one big, beautiful bill is because I was hearing early on that some of my colleagues was demanding we have to have the border funding. We needed to secure the border. And we had other colleagues saying, I don't feel comfortable with all that money going for ICE or Customs and Border Patrol. Then we had other members that was like, I don't want to make permanent President Trump's successful tax cuts unless we increase the corporate tax rate or we increase the top individual tax rate. And it so happened that the people who wanted to do the increase in the taxes also felt most confident about funding the border. That's why I said they had to be together to push them to get along and to thread that needle to pass the bill. I think we're going to have to do it with this one. I think that, I know the Senate is pushing for such a smaller one, but I think we should not just deal with peanuts. I was like, let's do everything that we can.
Go big or go home.
Go big or go home. We have 8.5 months of this year of legislative session, 2 months. We're not even going to be in session. So ultimately, we have 6.5 months of legislative priorities. Let's find a way to put the Save America Act in it. We can find a budgetary impact to allow it to go through the rules of reconciliation. Let's look after the waste, fraud, and abuse that's within the programs and attach it all. Let's get the job done for the American people. And you know what? In the meantime, I think it would be extremely important for the United States Senate to revisit their filibuster rules.
Absolutely.
They change those all the time, Erin. And my proposition is if there is a lapse of government funding and a government shutdown, the filibuster is out the window and anything can be passed with a simple majority vote. That would incentivize the Democrats and the Republicans in the United States Senate to actually come together and work together and get the job done, because they would never want the filibuster. But you know what? If they can't get the job done, don't let the American people be punished. Do it with 51 votes.
I think that's an incredible idea. We should absolutely look at doing that and encourage the Senate to do it. Let's be clear, the Senate can do this if they choose to do it.
Right.
They set their own rules, and they have set this filibuster rule. Yes, has it been historically used for many years? Yes, it has. But reconciliation is our only way to avoid the filibuster, which is why we were able to accomplish so much in that bill and why we could accomplish so much more. The American people voted for the things that we delivered in the One Big Beautiful Bill, but they're still asking for things like the Save America Act to prevent illegal immigrants from voting in our elections by requiring voter ID and proof of citizenship. I mean, you got to show your ID. I joked the other day that Americans have to show their ID every week to buy alcohol too. And then I was like, well, maybe they're not using their ID every week to buy alcohol, but they are using their ID all the time. It's something that when we're electing the most powerful leader of the most powerful country in the world, I think the least we should do is make sure that only our U.S. citizens are voting in those elections. Some of these things we can do in reconciliation. Well, I know you have a tight schedule. I think you've got a hearing today. You've been engaging in so much work. You had Melania Trump in front of the Ways and Means Committee as on a panel talking about foster care. I was a former case manager for the Indiana Department of Child Services.
That's great.
I have a long number of years of experience in working on those policies. We are working on provisions to try to encourage states to keep kids in foster care if they choose to be, with services and support through the age of 21. I know some of these issues are very near and dear to your heart, and the way that you use what's called Chafee funds to support foster youth. Is there anything you want to know with your work with Melania Trump on these important issues?
It is so great to hear of your background. I forgot about that. I was actually guardian ad litem as well for kids in foster care. So it's very personal to me as well. But the First Lady, Erin, has been phenomenal. What a classy individual. For her to come and to do a roundtable with Republicans and Democrats on foster care issues was phenomenal. We had a couple foster children there that gave us the story of their life. We were in tears. It was absolutely amazing. And the First Lady, to raise the attention of the need to address this with foster children who their parents have abandoned them. And she cares about them, and she's showing love. She told me, she's like, Jason, I want to use my power and influence to make a difference in the lives of these foster kids.
And she absolutely can.
And she will.
One thing that stuck out to me, I had some former foster youth come to my office, and I always feel like since I worked in that system, like any foster kid is like my own. I feel like, we just care about their well-being and their future. I have kids that are college aged. They come home during the breaks. Kids that have aged out of foster care and try to go to college. Think about, where do they go on summer break? Where do they go on Christmas break? They don't have any place to go. And we have seen former foster youth who've aged out of the system. They figure out how to make it work, but it's very difficult, very challenging. So I hope that our universities will start to consider, if they haven't already, housing support for former foster youth, people that don't have a place to go on those breaks, and then also encourage states to help keep those supports in place. Thank you for your work. You and I, we're great friends, and we've had to try to hold it together. We've had to hold it together to be serious for talking about the very serious topics that we've discussed today. But you are just one of my favorite people in the whole wide world. I thank you so much. And I could nerd out on tax policy. We could nerd out on that. Like, we don't spend all of our time, talking about tax policy, but I would say we're both in the category of nerds. Would you agree?
Absolutely. The viewers would go to sleep if they let us nerd out on it.
We have to try to keep it entertaining.
Yeah.
So to that effect, I brought a gift for you today. From one nerd to another.
Look at that.
Nerds Gummy Clusters.
Gummy Nerds.
Gummy Nerds. For my favorite chairman of Ways and Means.
Your nerdiest chairman.
Your nerdiest
Is that what you're
chairman.
saying?
There you go.
Thank you.
Your Gummy Clusters.
Thank you.
Great to see you.
Appreciate it. Good to see you.
Thank you so much. Chairman Smith, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for your leadership. To all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode. Don't forget to subscribe, share the podcast, and stay inspired to contend, work hard, and have fun. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.